The character of the past is being preserved in beautiful, useful pieces of pottery by Heerspink and Porter Pottery near Cedarville. In our recent travels into Michigan's eastern Upper Peninsula, we were directed to the work of potters Brent Heerspink and Julie Porter. Slightly off the beaten path, somewhere between Cedarville and Sault Ste. Marie, we discovered the studios alongside an outdoor brick kiln. The uniqueness of the pottery produced here comes not only from the skill of these experienced artisans, but also from their firing method. This pottery is fired in their brick kiln, fueled by wood. The raw clay is exposed to the direct action of the fire and smoke as the flames flow through the kiln. It's a technique that results in giving each piece its own individual character.
Wood firing is a very old technique that goes back to the earliest pottery. At one time people found they could make pottery in a fireplace. Maybe they smeared some clay on a basket to patch it up or something, put it by the fire, and they found out that it hardened. And the progression from there on was to go to higher and higher temperatures and hotter and hotter. This type of pottery, where the stoneware clay, fired and colored by a wood kiln, goes back at least 5,000 years.
Oh my goodness.
And it has it's been done almost all parts of the world. At some time, potters have made real simple pots out of clay, put them in high temperature kiln, and let the kiln do most of the glazing. When like on this piece, when the wood fire gets on there, it causes variations of color and texture and sheen, and from the volatilized ash and small amounts of common salt that are in the kiln. So
hey, you also let the smoke do a little bit of the work too, don't you?
The smoke colors the pot. In this sense, this bowl would be a good. This lighter colored clay here is what might be termed the natural color of the clay in a clean firing. When smoke is in the fire, it reduces the metals in the clay, the iron particularly, to an oxide form, and it darkens it. And so we get this type of thing called fire marking. Lighter on the side away from the fire, darker towards the fire.
And it does add a character all its own, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a very old technique, and right now it's as popular as it's ever been in the United States.
Oh yeah, that is beautiful. And these are utilitarian pieces too.
They're totally functional. They're stoneware clay. They have an absorption of probably 1%. They're glazed with impermeable glazes, like these are a glaze made from 1/3 ash, 1/3 clay, and 1/3 feldspar. And for the local, we use local clay in that glaze.
Local, how local is this?
Well, there's a clay pan to the north of us. When you came from Pickford, okay, that flat area is the bed of an ancient lake. It's 300 feet deep. The clay is about 50 some miles wide by 72 miles wide there. It's a very fine grained ocean bottom clay called alluvial clay. It can be used, but only at low temperatures. There's some problems with low temperature glazes. We go to a much higher temperature and use stoneware glazes, which basically are using natural stones ground up and remelted into really synthetic stone. Our clay itself is a mixture of a fire clay and a stoneware clay. One comes from the pits in the Ohio River Valley where the early American salt glazed stoneware was made. The other one comes from Mexico, Missouri, and there's a company there that produces fire bricks worldwide. So it's two huge clean deposits of clay. We mix those together with sand to make what's called a clay body.
Tell us a little bit about your personal background, how you and Julie got into the world of pottery and stoneware specifically, and then into the wood fire stone pottery here.
When I was in college, I was going to be an elementary education teacher, and they had the requirement in Michigan was for 9 hours of art and music. I had taken band in high school and enjoyed it, so the music part was no problem. I didn't know what I was going to do in art. I always thought, well, I'll try pottery. And I really loved it. I kept going from there. I got an opportunity to work in a traditional pottery in England and France. I got some training that way, came back, set up a pottery of my own. At that time I met Julie. Julie was a Grand Valley pottery course student. They had like a professional pottery course there. She can probably tell you a little more about that.
Yeah.
I spent 3 years in a pottery course there, and then after that I went and worked at Greenfield Village at the pottery there. And after that I went and worked with Brent. So.
You got together in the mutual interest there.
Yes.
Right.
What's so fascinating about the world of pottery? I mean, what do you like about it? Is it just the forming of something out of the raw materials, or do you have your own story to tell about what is unique about it to you?
I think it is, for me, the natural material that was the first attractive thing. It's such a fluid thing to work with.
My dad and my family were woodworkers, and when I was in high school, I took quite a few metalworking courses. You're always working by subtraction. You start out with a piece, and you cut pieces off it to make what you want. All right? If you cut too much off, you've got a problem. With clay, you can have a dent. And it's a wonderful plastic material that responds more than anything else just to hands. You don't need thousands of dollars worth of equipment and special tools, routers, planers, and welders or anything like that. You basically can make pots with nothing more than clay from the ground, your hand, and a bonfire. It can get increasingly sophisticated as it goes on from there, but I think for us it's so plastic and so responsive.
Rather forgiving too.
Yep. And one of the beautiful parts about clay is, say we make a pot and we have some scraps left over, you save those scraps and you recycle them, and that clay is actually nicer clay than the clay you started with.
Really?
So there's no sawdust going out the back door or anything like that.
There's no waste here at all.
Theoretically, no.
Theoretically, no, but
they talk about zero emission, zero output businesses. A pottery definitely could be that way. I mean, any clay scrap goes in that barrel. Any clay scrap that goes on the floor goes outside and goes as a mud pack on our wood kiln. So you can keep reusing that clay. It's been said with electric kiln, if you put things in, they should come out exactly the way you imagine it. If not, there's some kind of technical flaw going on.
I see. It's pretty much down to a science. More
right. You've mixed your glaze poorly or something happened. With the wood kiln, you put them in, and when you open it up, there'll be pots in there that you could not imagine. No pot looks like you imagined it.
It's like Christmas every day.
As that flame goes through the kiln, it carries the volatiles, the wood ash and the salt with it. Yeah, people often say that, and we think that way too. It's like Christmas. It's a very exciting thing.
The heat, as far as temperature-wise, is there a difference between the electric and the wood? Can you get it up to a certain temperature of the wood?
The wood kiln, if it's designed properly, and the person that's stoking it knows what they're doing, you have goodwill. The problem is not reaching temperature. The problem is holding it down.
Oh.
And typically, the way that we do it is, we have a 5-year-old boy. His new job is what we call the preheat. He keeps a campfire going in there for the first day. The next morning we get up and we extend that campfire slowly so that the flame extends through the kiln about a foot at a time until finally it's going through the whole kiln. By that time the kiln is red hot. This may be anywhere from 6:30 to 9 o'clock at night. And at that point Julie will take over stoking. And unless it's incredibly bad weather or the wood is really wet, the problem is not reaching temperature. The problem is keeping it slowed down so that it heats evenly through the whole kiln.
Come up here to the kind of inspirational part of the state, the Upper Peninsula. I mean, that's kind of rather wilderness out through here, and you get a lot done.
Yeah, we both like the wildness of it.
Yeah.
The last few weeks of winter can get kind of long sometimes.
I'll bet they can. That's when you do a lot of your work too, is winter, is it? Or?
It's our one time a year when we have a solid block of work. In about 3 weeks, we start on our shows. The first one is in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Then 2 weeks later in Birmingham, Michigan. 2 weeks later, East Lansing. Then it starts getting even busier till later in the summer. It's like a show a week. And at that time of year, basically we're trying to react to what's selling.
Well, from the Eastern UP, we'd like to thank Brent and Julie from Heerspink and Porter Pottery for sharing their world with us of the beautiful, unusual wood-fired process here. Thank you very much, Brent. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Julie, keep up the great work, and we'll see more of your items on the trade shows and special galleries throughout the state.
Great.
Thank you.